So welcome everybody, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate seeing all of your faces, especially those that I've known from my past and in recent events. Level 7 is a marketing-centric consulting firm that specializes in marketing, branding, advertising, and web development. So custom app dev, traditional marketing websites, we run the gamut. So we're excited to be new members of the AAF, and we're excited that we've been asked to help lead the conversation today. These titles up here, I don't really think they speak to what Anthony and I really do at Level 7, so I'll just give you a little bit of our background so you can learn the perspectives by which we're bringing to the conversation today. So Client Services Director, that's just one of, as my staff will tell you, that I say one of many hats that I wear. I am in an account management role, but I also help the firm in marketing and advertising strategies. So I've worked in the Cleveland area for almost 15 years. I've worked and managed brands like Metro Health, Cleveland.com, Crane's Cleveland Business, the American Heart Association, and many others. So I'm excited to be on the consulting side because I get to leverage all of that experience to help do it for our clients. And then Anthony, I don't really think that tells what he does on our staff. So he is part of the creative team. He serves as our front-end developer, so he has a great eye for design. He knows about the user experience and is able to make the most of that in any development project that he's on. He also specializes in our mobile development, helping us with video and photography, so he dabbles in a little bit of everything. He also has some side businesses that if you want to learn more about Anthony, you can hear all about his many talents after today's event.
With everything.
That's right. And today, we're obviously going to open up the conversation, and we're going to try and lead it talking about social media, and we're going to ask the questions as to whether we think this is a tool that you can leverage in your organization or whether we think this is a weapon of mass distraction. So before we get started, I wanted to take some time and just make sure that everyone has filled out the forms. Everyone got a little worksheet when they came in. Make sure you fill those out, then turn them over because we don't want them to be a distraction during the presentation. We'll address those later on. And then we want to spend some time getting to know you. While we're going to present some of the things that we've learned, some of the successes, some of the failures that we've had in our organization. We are clearly not standing up here today saying that what we're going to talk about is the silver bullet, the only way to do things. It's just to hopefully open up the conversation and get you thinking about what is possible in the way that you look at social media in your organization. So let's start with some questions. Audience participation is going to be big today, so get ready. Does your company currently limit social media use in the workplace? Can you raise your hands? So we have one. Only one. Okay. Do you know? Maybe you don't know. Is there a policy that you're maybe unaware of? Everyone's pretty clear that they don't. Okay. As a professional, do you believe that social media is a distraction? Anybody? Raise your hand. Yes? Yes? So we have a couple of those. Some people are nodding. So about half of the room. Do you believe that social media can increase your productivity? We have a couple, we have some nods. Okay, so the majority of people are in on that one. Okay, so we're going to try and circle back for those of you who are either not in agreement that this can be a distraction or it cannot increase your productivity. We'll circle back to some of these throughout the presentation. But before we get too far down the line, I think we should start with some level setting. And we should go ahead and define what social media is in terms of what we're talking about today.
Like you said, one of the first things, what exactly is social media? And I think there's a really big common misconception of, where the line draws between social media and social networking. A lot of people who say, what's social media? People will jump in and say, it's Facebook, it's Twitter, and then they might just leave it at that for the conversation. And really want to say it's a lot more than that. Social media at its point is just a way for you to get your conversation out. It's a one-to-many relationship. You're telling the world what you want to say, you're sharing your knowledge, you're sharing your insight, sharing any kind of information, and you want to solicit some kind of response. You want feedback. And then to that, you've got your social networking, which just really creates that platform for you to do it. So you do have your Facebooks, Twitter, LinkedIn, these platforms to tell yourself and to bring these groups of people together around the same interests and to discuss those. Social media does have a lot of platforms outside of just your social networking. You've got forums, you've got blogs, and a lot of sites dedicated to just specific information that really can drive any kind of conversation that needs to be. So talking about that, we want to look at what are some of the effects of social media. And we'll start with disadvantages of it. And there really are a lot of disadvantages. And the first one, we talk about, it can be a distraction sometimes. It's really easy to just jump into a site, and they talk about, sometimes with YouTube, dabbling in, the dark sides of YouTube where, you're looking at a video maybe related to work, and next thing you know, you're looking at some video of, kittens rolling around on the ground, and then babies laughing. Everyone knows the really common, social media ones out there that everyone likes to laugh at. So you create these distractions, which then leads to some kind of loss of productivity. And there's been research out there that talked about as soon as you lose track of that focus, it can go into take up to 23 minutes just to really get back to where you need to be. Looking at that, next big issue is you can have bad publicity. The biggest story I know along to go with this was about 4 years ago. I had a friend that worked at a pet land, just a pet shop. What they had was a girl that worked there, she posted a photo of these rabbits. What they were doing was inhumanely terminating their lives because they had illnesses. She thought it'd be a great idea to take these rabbits, post a nice photo with her smile on Facebook, and, what's going to happen to her? Nothing, she thinks. Well, the coverage really left it at that with the news sites. What actually happened was that location had to shut down because of lawsuits that came in. The business owners that owned that one actually owned another location. That brought in Petland corporates, which then came in and said, you're doing things wrong here. We're going to terminate your franchise as well here. So really, these chains of reactions that can come in, that a lot of people don't really think about sometimes. The last thing to really look at with disadvantages is kind of the weight on your internal networks. So if you have a lot of people watching YouTube videos or spending time looking at images, it can weigh heavily on your own networks. And so if you've got a couple people over here that are trying to be productive, now the internet's loading really slow because you got a bunch of people over here watching some funny video that's spreading around the office. So, you can have some issues that come along with it. Next, we want to look at some of the advantages. So, while there are disadvantages, of course, there are advantages to it. So one of the biggest things is it facilitates this open communication. It gives the opportunity for you as a professional to share your knowledge across these platforms with other professionals, to build your own personal brand, and to really explore beyond what's going on necessarily in your own office. One of the nice things about that is using these social media sites to find out more about any issues you might be having. So maybe you're working on a project and come across an issue and you don't know what to do. What's nice about social media is there's probably someone else out there that has ran into that issue before. So instead of spending hours and hours trying to figure it out yourself, do a quick Google search. Here comes 5-6 blogs with all the answers you need. You can read through them. Great thing. Along with those sites, you got other people that might be on there asking questions or on your own personal site, or if you figure something out, you can share it on your own personal site and help someone else out in the future. So it can really go win-win with those type of things. Another nice thing about it is kind of market research that you can do. It gives you access. Traditionally you might have to bring in a market research agency to come in and we want to do polling, we want to do focus groups, we want to do all these things. Now you've got access to Facebook, to Twitter, to all your employees' Facebook and Twitter accounts, and you can say, hey, send this survey out real quick. And next thing you know, within seconds, you could send it to 5,000 people based off of everyone in your own company. So it really gives you this opportunity to reach a much larger demographic in a very short period of time. I think one of the most beneficial things is that it can increase productivity. I know personally, when I'm working on my own development, I could be looking at hundreds, thousands of lines of code across hundreds of documents, and you get to a point sometimes where I find myself just staring at the screen, kind of trying to figure out what to do next. You really need an escape from the work that you're doing. You need a chance to just take a break. So you go off, what it needs to be. You spend 5 minutes again. Look at some kittens for 5 minutes. Get a good smile on your face, and who knows? Sometimes I found it looking at completely unrelated things, all of a sudden that aha moment kicks in and you go right back to your work. And instead of spending hours staring at the screen trying to figure out what to do, that couple minute break really got you away from it and let you, come back to it, refresh, and look at it in another light.
So that sort of brings us to the turning point in this discussion. So we're talking about, we've shown you the advantages and the disadvantages, and I think if we wanted to spend more time, we could continue bringing up these stories and making use cases on both sides. But it really comes down to this question of should you restrict? So to restrict or not restrict, that's sort of the question that organizations and people have to answer for themselves. So one thing as a manager, so One of the reasons why Anthony and I are sort of tag teaming this discussion today is because when we were first approached, I looked at it from the perspective of I have 11 people on my staff. I am constantly looking at the numbers. I'm constantly looking at billability. I'm constantly being asked the question from my president, why aren't we being more productive? How can we get more billable hours? And I didn't want to just stop the conversation there because it would be so easy for me to say just limit it. But I encourage you to think about this forbidden fruit concept. The fact that when organizations, and I understand that some of them have to have policies, I'm not suggesting that nobody should have a policy, but when you restrict it, when you ban it, when you take it away from people, are you making it that forbidden fruit? Are you just inviting that staff member to find other ways to circumvent the system? So you may block it on your company laptop, but if you're part of my team, every single one of my staff members has a personal iPad, a cell phone, and then we can take the conversation out of the context of social media altogether and say that in 2013, today we're talking about social media because that's the hot button. That's the easy thing to point to and say there are distractions in the workplace and it's got to be that. That's the reason why we're not billable enough. That's the cause. But if we look back before the internet, there were still questions about do you have disruption in the workplace? So I implore you today, and what we're going to talk about today is to look at ways that you can maybe stop to think about that as the end result and the problem you need to solve, and to think more about creating a culture that embraces these things to leverage them in a positive way. Because we can talk about so many use cases. I remember a time in managing a team years ago when we did restrict access and they just found other ways to do it. Personal phone calls, coming into work late because they were doing things on their own time, taking longer smoke breaks, whatever. So I just want to think about that today as the conversation unfolds, is this concept of sort of forbidden fruit. One other story that came up in our discussions when we were planning this conversation is a very unique case that Anthony's uncle actually,
My dad.
your dad.
Close enough. My dad.
Uncle,
yeah,
dad.
Yep.
At least it's male. I
Yep.
got part of it right.
Same family. He works up at NASA. Obviously, if you're following anything with politics, he's taking a nice break right now. But he was talking to me. We were working this weekend outside, and he said, I was telling him about, we're doing this project now about social media and blocking sites and information like that. And he said one of the biggest problems he has there is how much stuff gets blocked. And rightfully so. There, they do have their limitations with security and need to restrict things. But he said, he's an engineer there, and there's a lot of times he needs to do research online and working with some of the smaller parts, nuts, bolts, ball bearings. You can imagine where some of the filtering would come in and block sites. So he said, there's a lot of times there's this long process where I just need the size of this ball bearing. But instead, he has to go down to the IT department, submit a form saying, I would like access to this website. They go through the powers that be to make sure the website's okay, there's no viruses, kick it back and say, you've got a half an hour to browse it, and then we're blocking it again. And so he goes on there, and it doesn't have the information he needs. So he goes to the next article on Google, and he has to do the process all over again because it's another blocked site. So he said, can really set him back 2-3 days just to get the smallest bit of information. So it's really something to think about sometimes, Again, where it kind of makes sense for their case, and it is they need security, but you've got smaller firms sometimes that I've seen that really just go crazy blocking things, and you've got to put in the potential of security and mix it with, are we just setting people back for productivity? So,
Right,
something
and
to
I
keep in
think
mind
it's
with that.
really to come together as an organization like Anthony and I did, and make sure that you're addressing the right problem. Because if productivity is it could have been one of the root causes why there were restrictions on their website. Also, as he said, viruses and other things, obviously NASA is a security risk. But just making sure that all the parties are coming to the table and developing the right policy that works for the organization so you don't end up with additional issues or people circumventing the system. So we wanted to take some time and kind of throw in some statistics. So this room was a little skewed in the fact that most of the people in this room don't have a policy, or they're aware that they don't have a policy, but this is just some of the research that we found, more sort of just to open your eyes and take it outside of your particular perspective. But approaches to social media, most people don't know if there's a policy in place, or it's completely open, as in the case with all of us, or it's monitored or limited or that sort of thing. This kind of just puts it into perspective. too far. So then talking about policies. So we mentioned just crafting something that works right for your organization, that there is no silver bullet. So again, most people don't know if their corporation has a policy. In some, it's just as simple as be professional. But does that really work? Does everyone know exactly what be professional is? If some of you got here early enough, you saw one of the little teaser videos that we put up there with the animation where the guy's like, oh yeah, I closed this deal and I took her out for drinks and then I posted all this stuff on Facebook, and then she's like, and she got fired. So you may have to do some education and training around that, because be professional to somebody may not mean be professional to everybody. So just some statistics. And then this sort of plays into this conversation that I wanted to start, I teased a few moments ago, and the fact that I think we might be looking at it from the wrong perspective. That social media, I think if used correctly, can be very productive. And the thing that we really should be asking is, do you have a social media problem or do you have a personnel problem? So you can take away social media, but if these people want to be a distraction and they want to communicate, they're going to find ways to do it. So this just shows you that personal relationships, based on this particular poll, were found to be actually more distracting than social media as a whole. So what can we do about it?
So discussing people specifically and looking at this, is it social media or is it the social person problem? I invite you all to take out your surveys now. And you can look over your questions. So just quickly, raise your hands. How many of you answered yes to at least 3 of them? Everyone, almost. All right, so we've got mostly active users, which is great. Want to go to the next slide?
Sure.
If we look at the active user, it's this user that really does see social media as an outlet to, engage with others, advance their career, sees the potential of the productivity in it, sees the potential that they can really further themselves with it. And I think the active user is what companies should strive for in their employees, and educating them how to be active users. The active users can, give back to the organization, spreading the organization's message, being professional, showing that as an employee of this organization, they are responsible, professional within it, and that it's, a good company to work for. They're allowed to use social media. It's a fun, corporate environment. And the active users aren't too much what we're worried about. It's really the passive users that you can have a problem with. And it's this casual mindset of just using social media to pass time. It's, just getting sucked into a site, and next thing you know, an hour and a half's gone by and you're just, browsing further and further down the Facebook wall. And I found myself at one point where I was a passive user, and I would get to these moments where I would get sucked in to other people's lives that, people I haven't seen for 5 years that honestly I could really care less about what they're doing. But for whatever reason at the time, it seemed interesting. And you can get these points of frustration sometimes, digging into this when that hour and a half goes by and you realize, oh geez, I just spent, an hour and a half doing nothing. And, it's to really be productive in these environments, you need to have a positive outlook on, your involvement in the company, and getting that frustration can really bring you down with it. So what I did was take a look at, I'm this passive user, how do I become an active user? How do I make my time more useful, for myself, for the organization, just to make myself feel better. So I found other outlets to spend time on. One of the big things I turned to at that time was Twitter, and I found that finding that right mix of people to follow can really add productivity to my day. One of the big things is, being a developer, I follow a lot of developers within different parts of, I suppose, coding environments, and really the higher up respect to people, the people that are, creating these frameworks. And by following them, I can spend just a couple minutes. I don't follow many of them. I've limited how many I follow. So, once a day I can check it, and there's not a whole lot of updates. I'm not going to spend hours and hours looking at new information. I can check a couple things, figure out, hey, this new framework's out. I might look into it real quick. So instead of wasting my time looking at something that's not meaningful at all to my life, I can now further my education, take that back to the organization, take that back to my peers, and with platforms like that, share that with my peers and say, look at this information I found. I think you could use it too. It could be beneficial. So I think that's the big thing with your active and passive users, is really finding that good mix of where you can, I don't want to say waste time, but if you need that break, to do it in a positive way for yourself. So I think the next big thing to look at then is, how do you manage it? And looking at it from an individual perspective, again, it's becoming that passive to a active user, finding the ways, take breaks responsibly. You may get frustrated sometimes with your work, but sometimes, you need to just push through it. You need to, whatever you need to do, put your headphones on and just focus on what you're doing, and really concentrate on the task at hand. But if you need breaks, find the responsible ways to do it if you're using social media. If you know there's certain sites that really distract you or take your mind away from the work that you're doing, change it up a little bit. Find platforms that can educate you, that can involve you, and that you can give back to. Join social groups that are within your career or that your peers are in, or even hobbies that you're interested in outside of it that you can really bring back to your everyday and improve your tools of the trade, I suppose.
So sorry for the distraction, but I just passed out some of the handouts. So along the same lines of what Anthony was suggesting, the insert into that booklet are some ways as an individual that you can try to self-manage and regulate your access if you find that you are a passive user. The majority of the people in this room are not, but maybe you have staff, maybe you have colleagues, coworkers, people that are struggling to be able to find this balance on their own. I really liked Anthony's example about how he personally self-managed. For myself, I didn't take the same course of action. I didn't simply change the focus to make it more professional. I just don't open those tabs at work. Or I allow myself in the downtime, if I only have 20 minutes to work before a critical meeting, I'm gonna give myself that 20-minute break. Just go to Facebook. I'm gonna do the mindless stalking because I need to stalk sometimes and I need to look at kittens. Forrest will tell you that he pumped me up yesterday because I was having a little bit of a rough day and sent me over pictures of kittens and I felt much better. So that's what I do. You need to figure out what works for yourself, and we've tried to provide some options for you to consider. You just really have to find the right mix, and it's all about having that accountability and recognizing that it is a choice to be active or passive, and just trying to figure out the right mix for you. So then if we look at it from the organizational perspective, so say you're a manager like myself, and you're getting hit with all of this, why aren't people doing this? Well, what's the problem? So as a corporation, I think it's important that you sit down with your team and you engage in that open dialogue and you bring some of these examples. Like I loved what Anthony brought to the table because it was a whole different perspective than what I had. He doesn't get harped on about financials and billing all the time. He needs that break. Sometimes he needs to shop and buy things for his new house because he needs to walk away from the problem for a little bit. And so it's about finding that mix and creating that culture within your organization that you create these self-managing teams that are out there and they understand it's part of their responsibility to be professional. It's part of their responsibility to manage themselves or to manage each other on the team. If you have somebody who's not performing on the team, Anthony will tell you, in our space, we call each other out. If somebody's slacking off, you guys harp on each other all day long. I barely have to say anything. So it's about creating that culture and making sure that there is no weak link on the team. And if somebody is slacking off, they need to understand what that does to the overall productivity. So it's figuring out what works for the organization, helping get buy-in from all of your team, making sure that they're a part of the process because they're going to be more likely to embrace it. At that point, I just want to sort of pause because we've thrown a lot of information and it hasn't really been all of that interactive. So
I think social media probably gets a bad rap. I was just in monitoring the AAF site and I'll go through it just to see if there's anything on there that shouldn't be there. Just seeing things like, ugh, another wet Monday morning. So, I don't care. Do you think that that's part of the reason? Because it can just, you follow 3 or 4 people who give you something.
I think it comes back to that kind of responsible user. I agree. You do get sometimes, the meaningless posts that really kind of look at it. It's like, that's great. Sorry you had a rainy day. It happens. And it's, I suppose sometimes either yourself, you need to shut it out. I think, if you're the one posting, you can post it realizing the ramifications that other people are going to see that. Every time that you see someone do that, you've got to realize, and you're thinking, Who cares? You've got, your X amount of followers thinking the exact same thing when you
I just
post it.
think that for managing and for people who are managing other people, that it just gives them a bad rap, and they just say, well, it's worthless, I'm not even gonna bother allowing it, I'm gonna
Right.
cut it off.
I think that's where we look at kind of implementing the social media policy that's more educational than restrictive. So you say to your employees, you just let them know, we're going to do this policy. Here's why. Here's the things we've noticed over the past couple months, years, people are doing that it doesn't look good in the light of our company. Here's some examples of, this is what you should be posting. Here's what's good for you. Here's what's good for your growth. Here's what's good for the organization's growth. And if you need to, put limits on certain things. While we don't recommend it, I think, again, it just comes back to educating your team, your employees, even just the people around you, and saying, just think about what you're posting and how it's reflecting back to everyone else.
Well, and I think along those same lines of just education is, there are certain things and certain outlets on social media that are more appropriate than others. So if we look at Facebook, maybe somebody doesn't realize that they can allow only certain groups of people to see certain posts. That's probably not, certain posts are going to be, they should be restricted to your personal life, and they shouldn't be seen by your professional circles. Maybe they don't know how to do that. So, one of the other things that we put in this document is some other either self-regulating programs or system-wide programs that you can install in an organization. So like Kelsey, one of our designers, when she was helping us with this program, she installed one of the tools for herself. She was just curious to see where she was spending her time, how much time she was on Facebook and iChat and everything else. And what's been sort of your reaction? It's only been about a week or so. But
You'd be shocked about the amount of time, like the amount of distractions. You don't realize it until you look at this program. The one that I picked is actually in this booklet. It's called Rescue Time, just the free version. It shows you, obviously it shows me how often am I in design programs. It shows me for how long am I being productive versus, okay, you're taking a break every 15 minutes and then it takes me a while to get back to where I was being productive. So it actually breaks it down, and it tells me if I walk away from my computer and I'm printing something, it says, hey, you were gone for 15 minutes, what were you doing? And I can tell it, oh, I was printing, or oh, I don't remember what I was doing. So, but it's shocking, and it tells you a percentage of how productive were you this week. And I think it only ended up being like 50% productive, and I felt really bad about it.
we need to talk. Just kidding. But it's those types of things. Like, I really appreciated that she got that into the conversation and took it upon herself to really look at that. She is one of our new staff members, a recent college grad, and this is her first job. So I felt like that was a really great initiative that she took upon herself as an individual to say, hey, I want to see how productive I am for the organization. I really want to see where I'm spending my time. So what we've provided in this guide, the first few applications, and Kelsey, correct me if I'm wrong, but they are all tools that you can install as an individual, correct? And then on the right-hand side, those are more of your system-wide policies. So if as an organization you decide that you do need some sort of a tool, you could look at more of like a Barracuda or something like that, that would be sort of the more encompassing, like the example of the NASA case, that it is going to block certain websites, certain keywords from searches, that sort of thing. So again, depending on what works out best for your organization, there are a plethora of options out there for you to choose from. And these are just some of the ones that we researched, we've tried, and then just ways that you can take some of these initiatives back to the organization.
You have to be cautious sometimes with it too, with the all that blocking. Anymore, I think the younger generations growing up with the social media have this expectation of great corporate cultures now. You've got the Googles, the Facebooks out there, these lavish work environments, taco bars and
Gyms.
Yeah,
and
gyms, anything you can think of,
beauty
haircuts on the
salons.
spot, yeah. And people really want this, wow environment sometimes. And while social media, isn't the end-all be-all to that, it is a good platform to show off your corporate culture that you have. If you look at Build.com, Zappos, and there's a few others on YouTube, they've got channels dedicated to just their corporate culture. It's just joking around silly videos that they make to say, look how great of a place we are. It's company money spent, doing these videos, but in the end it turns around and draws in, attractive talent for that. And I think it's one of the things to kind of keep conscious of. There are the ramifications of going, all out blocks and really limiting such a trivial thing sometimes. If you have, this new generation of people coming in and seeing, how big brother it is sometimes. They might not want to work in that environment, and, they might find other options then if they need to.
Right. Any other examples?
Yeah, I've got a comment.
Yeah.
We have a lot of people who are charged with posting on social networks and monitoring competition on social networks, and a lot of us, and we've hired a lot of younger people in the last couple of years, and it's really hard to tell if it's productive
What's
or
work
if
and
it's
what's
fun.
not, right.
And there's some shades of gray too, and we all
Right.
fall into that, where is this work or is this fun or is it a combination of both? And
Right.
It's a little fuzzier than it used to be.
Right, and that's why I suggested that it's more about education and creating a culture. So, because I don't think you can really answer that question. I struggle with that, and when I first, took over managing the team, I think Anthony and I didn't understand that about him. I'm not a developer by trade. My role is fairly regimented every day. I have a client meeting, I need to do an hour to do this proposal, I have this, I have that. So I don't have a lot of opportunity to be distracted, and there's not that luxury. But with Anthony, who codes 8 hours a day, he sits there and looks at the same problem every day. I struggle with the fact that when I come into the office and I see that he's on Facebook, I'm like, what? And then I walk out and I come back, I'm like, you're back on Facebook 2 hours later? But it's all about opening that communication. And I know I asked a lot of questions up front, like, did you guys just play on Facebook all day? Like, what's going on? Because you have to really find out, and you have to put yourself in their shoes, I think, and really allow them to be part of the conversation, because it would have been so easy for me to walk into the organization and say, no more, because you guys are wasting too much time. And we've had to, and we're continuing to have these conversations, and we sometimes get it wrong, and we're going back, and we're trying to create more of an empowered team that understands what we're trying to do than to regulate and restrict everything. And again, that may only work for level 7, but these are some of the challenges that we've had. Has anyone else had any other examples or challenges in your particular environments that you're concerned about?
Do you have salespeople at level 7?
We do. And I
What
forgot
would
to
you-
give out these.
What would you say
services.
if you saw a salesperson spending 4 or 5 hours a day on LinkedIn? Would it be productive, or would they be
Depends on what the
wasting their time?
conversation is.
3 hours, 2 hours.
They're updating their work experience. That
Right,
would be a good-
right. Yeah, I think it depends on what's going on. Are they trying to do the in-mails? Are they trying to build their circles? Are they asking for recommendations? Are they posting portfolio pieces that then they're sharing out with their circles?
They should be
What's the
doing all of
activity? Right.
I think the big thing at that point is kind of measuring their success within it. I know
Right.
one of the side businesses I work with do a lot of stuff with luxury watch brands. And one of the biggest outlets, a business partner I found with it, is actually LinkedIn, because it is your business professional crowd who usually has that more expendable budget to spend, on a $200,000 watch maybe. And so we've actually built a very large kind of group of our very large network within that, where we do a lot of sharing of our information. We found that we actually get the most return within LinkedIn because of that circle of people. So I think it's all about measuring, if you're trying to get traffic back to your site, look at your analytics, see, is the time that they're spending in justifying the amount of traffic you're getting back. If it's not, you look at it and say, either you need to cut back or you need to change the way you're doing this because it's not working. And then I think just measuring other kind of campaigns, and then there's a lot of tools out there as well, online tools that can monitor that kind of success for you as well. And I think that's the big thing is, sometimes if it's ever in question, just kind of looking at the success reports coming back from it and monitoring that aspect.
Right. And the only caveat I would say to that is don't just get hung up on the numbers, because if you're in marketing like myself, you miss out on that whole spectrum of brand awareness. That doesn't affect your bottom line all the time or always right away. But I think that is a critical thing, that's why I encourage people to have open conversations, because if you just look at the numbers, while that's one way to look at a problem, you're missing this whole other component of what did that do to elevate your brand, how many more people are engaged, how many more are following, how many people know about you. I mean, even with the AAF just getting involved in the last couple of months, I think we've seen tremendous increase in people knowing who we are and that we're out there. And I can't necessarily equate that to sales right now. But the fact that people know who we are and the fact that our colleagues in the industry know who we are, that's that speaks volumes, and that will hopefully allow us to attract better people to gain market share and recognition and awareness and things like that don't always happen right away. Yeah.
And just to kind of couple with some of the things that they've said, the one thing, before I was employed with Level 7, I was employed with Apple Retail. And one of my favorite approaches for social media is how Apple does things with social media when you're employed there. They embrace social media. They know that a lot of their publicity is word of mouth with Apple. You don't see too many, I mean, obviously with iPhones and stuff, you see advertisements a lot now, but talking about their computers and things like that, it's all word of mouth from people who get a great experience with their computer or love their products. And their approach to social media is simply, go ahead and you can talk about it. Talk about the company, talk about your great experiences. And they utilize that with customer service as well. So say John Doe over here has an awful experience with a computer. Apple watches everything that is tagged with MacBook Pro, with Apple, anything like that. They'll reach out to those customers. And utilizing it in that way, how they monitor their employees with social media is also in the same effect that if I work there and I say Apple sucks, you bet within 24 hours one of my managers is probably going to be talking to me about it. But it's cool because they give you a new aspect of social media in terms of help us as a company, because it's such a large company, that's how you're going to get your information out there, but also it's because it gives personal opinions to people rather than just jargon that's posted on their website about how awesome this product is. They really will use things that they see on social media, what employees say about the company, what customers say about the company. So it's a totally different approach coming from such a large corporation. Yes, they have a department that's literally watching Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, seeing what people are saying, but they're utilizing it in other ways as well. So it's not necessarily a negative thing as much as it is as having this collective of positive things as well.
Absolutely. And I think that speaks to the power, if you can know, if you're watching the trends and you know the customer sentiment and can get in front of it, I mean, that just speaks to what we talked about, the advantages of how it can be much more productive. Wouldn't you like to know if your customers were out there saying negative things about you instantly and be able to react like that? So just being able to have this open policy and utilizing these tools, I think that that's yet another advantage to why they can be very powerful in the workplace. We still have some more premium items up here. I can't give them to those two because they work for us. So who else wants them? Who else would like to share?
I think you used the word leveraging earlier, and I think that we are in a, what's that?
A moleskin.
Yes, indeed.
You're welcome.
You were talking about leveraging, and we're clearly in, most of us, a marketing perspective, so we have to understand brand management, and we're all moving towards social media. Like, even if it's not the place that we find out about something, it's where we go next. And so within our workplaces, it seems advantageous for us to not only understand what they are and what each network is, but how do each of us individually leverage that?
Right.
So if you create a culture where it's a bad thing,
Right.
what are you going to do in 10 years when you're going to say to a customer, yeah, we can handle your Facebook and Twitter,
Right.
and then you shut the door on that? I think that when you say leveraging, like, the first thing I think about is, wow, we might need to get everybody becoming a passive user in a sense beyond, well, it's raining today,
Right.
to, like, put up something engaging once a week. Are you
Right.
guys getting responses? How are you feeling about this? Like,
Right.
because you can teach your people how to use it, and that can actually become a skill
Absolutely.
inside of your, just from using it right.
Right, absolutely. I heard she was a social media strategist at the AMA a couple of months ago, and I'm blanking on her name. But she defined it very well because it took it past the fact of you should have a post every week or whatever. Like we're all kind of looking for this schedule of what we should be posting. She took it a step further and said there's a couple different criteria. So she will self-promote. That's obviously one of the things we all know about. But she does it in a way that builds her brand first. So she is the first person to say, hey, I'm speaking at this event tonight. So everyone knew. She didn't have to tell people she was a public speaker because she was just saying, hey, I'm super excited, I'm speaking. Everyone knew. So then it was sort of this ancillary getting to know you type post. But it's productive in the same sense. I have a dog, we're going to the dog park, whatever, we know she's an animal lover. And then the third is, what about her company in a way that, is effective and isn't too sales pushy? So, we just launched a new product. So she categorized it and was able to give very concrete examples, and I think that's what we have to do for our staff. Not just to say don't use it or be professional, but we need to take it that step further. And like Anthony said, give them specific examples. Because if you teach people and you show them and they start to have positive reactions, it will grow from there. And so it's just about helping bring them to the table and invite them into the conversation.
That's an interesting point you brought up too. The employees, especially the ad agency world, need to understand that concept. You can't just be familiar with Facebook and Twitter. You need to know the ones that only 10 people have signed up so far, so that you can stay ahead of that. And kind of having access to these larger networks gains access to the smaller networks, which trickles down to the even smaller networks. And you kind of have to follow that trail sometimes. And I think a good example of really a strong social media front is actually Chipotle. Obviously, everyone's heard of Chipotle, and it's not from a TV commercial because they haven't done one in 4 years. It's all online marketing campaigns, and they actually just did their first online video ad a month or two ago about sustainable food or something. And I think it's interesting that they've really utilized that power of social media and figured that, trying to approach this younger generation, it's not TV that we need to spend our, big bucks on. We don't need the $30 million Super Bowl halftime show. We can use this free service on Twitter and post, a couple times a day and get even more traffic out of it. And so there's a lot of approaches, even looking at that aspect of really using these free online sites, letting your employees use them to, again, bring that traffic back to you, and really no overhead cost of it.
Mm-hmm.
I always struggle with how to work with my clients on social media. Like, a lot of them will request me on like Facebook or Twitter. LinkedIn is a different thing because it's more professional oriented, but like Facebook and Twitter, I would say that I use mostly for personal use. So maybe you can speak to if you have any advice about whether to like restrict connecting with clients on social media or.
Sure. Again, I think it comes down to, and I'm sorry if I didn't see if you were going to respond, but I personally think it comes down to your personal choice, what you feel comfortable with. I have very few professional contacts in my personal networks on Facebook and Twitter. LinkedIn, obviously, that's where I would encourage people because that's where the conversation is typically a business. But I think depending on the nature of your job, depending on the types of things that you're putting on those sites, like Anthony said, he uses Twitter for primarily his professional advancement. My Twitter account is hooked up to my freelance website, which I model and act on the side. So when I'm typically tweeting, those are typically posts that people who know me in the marketing world would be like, what are you doing? What, I don't get it, So I've just chosen to silo those. I think it comes down to just knowing yourself, being cautious at first, but then it works for other people, and I'm going to put you on the spot, sort of. So I know Christian's brother very well. Would it be fair to say that your brother is very outspoken and very...
Yes, absolutely.
He does not draw the line in the sand between personal and professional, and he has no qualms about just putting himself out there, whether you like it or not. And that works for him. He is extremely
He uses
successful.
that as his own personal brand.
Yes, that is his brand, and it is bold, and it is in your face, and sometimes I read his posts and I'm like,
Appalled.
wow, But it works for him. He is very, extremely successful, and I watch his strategy sometimes, and I'm like, but that couldn't work for me. That's not who I am. You have to figure out what works for yourself, and so figure out who you want to be. I personally have made my path by following people that I strive to be like. I have several members, or mentors. Dawn Southard is probably one of my leading heroes, if you will. I think she is the epitome of what you should be in business. And she, personally and professionally, I admire her on so many levels, and she's herself. She is who she is, and very professional, and I just sort of followed in her footsteps and tried to do those types of things. But we are a little bit more reserved in our social media presence. I will never be Rick Turner. So I think you have to figure out, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like
Would
to
you-
speak to it as well,
Yeah.
yeah. Kind of, you see a lot of companies now using social media almost as their help desk. The other day I had an issue with an online Lowe's order, so I tweeted them and said I'm gonna take my order to Home Depot. Got an instant result from it. I got a tweet right back with a direct line to call someone. I got on the phone and they took care of it. And I got a nice coupon off too. But I think one of the big things with that is, you said more the personal social networks, Facebook, Twitter, things like that. Facebook has actually been great for me for keeping up with clients. With the watch stuff, a majority of my clients with that are in Switzerland, France, 6-hour time difference. It's not convenient to hop on the call and make a long distance call every time I need to talk to them. What's real nice is logging onto Facebook and seeing that either A, I got a message back from them, or B, they're online right now. Instead of waiting back and forth through an email chain to come through, you can just have a quick conversation with them, just finish up some work, check it out now. And it really can open up new lines of communication that really didn't exist prior to a lot of these networks now.
I like that.
I would also recommend it's harder on Facebook, but just have 2 Twitter handles if you can't. My friends would kill me if I posted about advertising marketing. Like, get off of here, we hate you. So I have 2, one that speaks to both audiences.
Right.
Is that common to have like a personal, because I think I'm in the same problem too, I'm in an entry-level position, I just graduated college where I had that personal account,
Right.
I said whatever I want to, and now I'm transitioning into this professional world, and it's like, uh-oh, people are watching me now. So I'm like, is it common to have 2 different accounts?
I think if you can manage it,
Okay.
I think it comes down to time management personally.
Okay.
I would never be able to keep up with 2. But I think that either investigate that, or I would recommend looking at limiting and creating, just the selection that when you make a post that you feel is personal, that you isolate that group of people so they don't see it. They have no idea. You have to be careful though with Facebook because they're constantly changing their policy and procedures and opening things up. So you have to be really careful to watch those things to make sure that if you've restricted your photos from anybody in a particular group, but then they change their policy again and all of a sudden everything's open season again. So you have to stay on top of it.
I think the question was more geared towards Twitter though with that, and I think it really depends the direction you want to take with it. I think you could have the option to open up a second handle, but I mean, you are your personal brand, and I think it all depends on really, the content, I guess, is, if you're using Twitter to keep up with friends, I suppose, maybe either look at using a different network to manage kind of those relationships that are more geared towards that, or you just kind of let it fly, I suppose, and just
Be Rich
people
Turner.
know that
It works
Yeah.
for him.
people know it's just your personal brand. It's who
Vice
you
president
are.
at
Colortown.
Colortown. Yeah, I was still thinking events works. But yeah, so you gotta figure out what works for you. Tread lightly in the beginning. That's all I would say, is if you decide to keep it all on the same channel. At the end of the day, like Anthony said, you are you. So if you feel comfortable putting that out there, go.
Let me ask just your opinion and everyone else in the room. How do you think in the next 10 to 15 years this is going to, this is going to change? Because I noticed that younger people kind of throw whatever they want onto their Facebook feed or their Twitter feed or Instagram or whatever, whereas if I ever put anything up on social media, I wouldn't say it's calculated, but I rewrite it 3 or 4 times because I think people are going to be, not judging, but what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like reviewing what I said.
Scrutinizing what you said,
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. Whereas,
Especially given what you do.
right.
You should know better.
Right. Whereas younger people in the industry, I've noticed, really don't give a damn about what they say. They just keep throwing stuff up there, which that's fine. I actually admire that, but
Right.
do you think that's going to change business etiquette or anything in the next?
I think it will. I think you've seen it change in many ways. Late night TV, what they can get away with now with what they could get away with 5-10 years ago. And I forget the other point I was going to make with it now.
I would say, absolutely. I'm completely on board with you. I have a lot of younger cousins, and they drop F-bombs on Facebook, and I literally, like, I cringe and I feel very old doing that now. Because those are things I probably would have said at that age, but not in a public space. And so I think they are bold, and it is about having the conversations with them instead of just, I think, restricting, because I think we will start to see things change. I don't know that they'll change that drastically, but change is inevitable.
Right.
I
So,
think
and
tolerance.
they're clearly comfortable with a lot of that.
Tolerance seems to open up a lot. I mean, even if you look at tattoos and piercings, 20 years ago,
Oh,
it'd
yeah.
be crazy, going in anywhere with tattoos and piercings and trying to get any kind of professional job. And now there's places that'll encourage it. I mean, you've got startups, presidents, CEOs of startup companies that, will look like they just came out of the circus sometimes. And it's, again, just kind of that younger generation coming up with it. I think certain things do become more socially acceptable. I think there'll always be that line in the sand, and while it always be pretty blurred, I think, it's your tolerance just, I think, goes up with it. And it's, I suppose what you're used to, that younger generation's, I think, a little more carefree than they should be sometimes, some of that. And I think for some people there'll be repercussions, and others might just get lucky. But I think they'll just have that tolerance that grows with it.
I don't mean to sound like a 70-year-old man, as I'm the chairman of the young pro group. But
There
it was
you
just a
go.
question.
I like it.
I think a lot of times what you see young people doing, young people who are not in sales, whose livelihood does not depend on other people's opinions of them, are very free to say whatever the heck they want from whatever cubicle of the organization that they might be in.
Right.
They might be generating all the creative content of an organization, but they're not on the firing line.
Right.
In terms of being somebody that is going to accept the yes or no
Right.
about whether their company is going to be a part of it. And if they're not, then they don't see the problem. So the people in the organization who you have to engage in this conversation are the people who field the yes or no, whether it's the company manager, the owner of the company, the individual sales. I mean, I'm in sales. I'm not going to post an F-bomb, just not going to do it. I don't see how it's going to be, how anything that I do in that realm might not offend someone, but I walk through the world and have professionally for years now, caring about whether that bothers somebody. So
Right.
it's not, I think part of this is a conversation we're missing, which is what part of the organization are you in?
Right.
If you're always going to be a creative, I don't think you have the same restriction, or nor should you, as somebody who is always going to be in sales. I just don't.
Right. I personally, and we've had this conversation in the office. Everybody sells, whether you know it or not. Whether your paycheck is dependent upon it, whether that's all you do every day. By me standing here today, by Anthony standing there today, we're selling you on the brand of Level 7, whether I like it or not. And you're making a decision about us just because we've interacted. And so that's what I would say to people is you are selling, whether you know it or not. And so it's important for us to just make sure that you understand the ramifications that you can have. Anthony gave a couple examples that impacted an entire organization because of one tweet. One tweet. The example we showed, one Facebook photo got somebody fired. Granted, that's an example. But it's true, and so I think it's about having them understand that they are champions of your brand, whether they have that title or not. You wanted to say something?
I was actually just going to say, I'm in the same boat as her. I recently graduated, and one of the people that I graduated, she is already incredibly successful with a freelance business. And I've talked to her about this on how she's so successful. And one of the things that she's always done is that her Facebook is just like mine. You can see my profile picture. You can't see anything about me until I add you. And I keep all of my professional contacts on my LinkedIn page. But for her, she has professional contacts on LinkedIn. All of her personal people are on her Facebook page. But she has a Facebook page that's just for her business. So if you're a client, she invites you to like the page. She posts periodic blog updates about things that she's doing in design. And that's the most, it works so well for her. And I think it can go for, even you as a professional, if you have your own Facebook page, that's a great way for clients to like you. But my posts are separate from my Facebook page. So I can post stuff on my timeline and no one will be able to see it if you're not friends with me, but you can see everything that I post on a Facebook page. And that's another great solution to still having a professional base and a personal base for people who want to like and share.
Right.
But it keeps everything separate. So, I mean, Nicole can attest, I'm an obsessive animal lover. I post rescues all the time. I walk dogs, I volunteer. So everyone must think that I'm a crazy cat lady because I love animals and that's all that's on my Facebook wall. And I don't want people that I'm working with to see that. But, you know, it's just something that's another solution to keeping things separate.
I think though, if you're doing a good job with people, you get to know them personally, they're gonna send you a note, hey, you know, I wanna be your friend on Facebook.
Right.
And not, personally, that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
But then, you know, the question is, how much of me do they get to know? I
Right.
don't get to say that. I really don't. I mean, to some degree I do, and I know I've got a 25-year-old daughter. I know I don't look that old, but I have a 25-year-old daughter, and she will tell you, absolutely, it's none of their business. But, yeah, I'm gonna say, give her another 5 years.
Right.
Because I want people to know me, I want to know them. The better I know them, the better I'm gonna be able to serve them, the happier they are gonna be with me, and vice versa. I want that. So I don't know that I mean, I wish I could restrict, but you know.
Right.
I'm
And I
kind of
think-
the opposite though. I'm her partner and we sell together.
Business partner.
But I'm much more private and I don't want the customers to really know me. And just my own personality, I don't share very much with our customers on a personal level. I do, they think I do, I really don't, and that's just my style. I would never want them to see that I'm a crazy animal lover, which I am, or whatever it might be, but that's her style of sales and it works really well for her.
Absolutely.
My style's different, it works really well for me. I think you're right, you have to decide who you want to be
Right.
and manage it effectively.
Right. And you're gonna have to try some things.
Mhm.
I know that there's probably posts that I put out there that I'm like, oh, it's there, whatever. And you move on, and it is part of just building those personal relationships. I can see your point. I think there's a lot of value to that. I think that a lot of people would say that they like Rick Turner because they know him, that he is the same person online as he is when he's standing in front of you. There is no curtain, there's no filter, and for him it works because he is selling a personal relationship there. And so
How
I
many
think you have
people are
to
going to look up him right when they get out of here?
Rick is
I know
awesome.
that I am.
He's been very successful. His posts are crazy. If you want something funny to look
We
at.
give them a heads up.
No, he's just gonna
Call
have
him
all
on
these
speakerphone.
followers. Yes. So with that, I love the fact that like we've gotten this very open dialogue started. There is an AAF LinkedIn group, right, where we can continue the conversation. So if there's other things that come up and we just want to bounce ideas off of each other, if you guys take any of these tools and suggestions we've given you, we'd love to hear about it. Also, there's a note in there, if you have any questions about selecting a tool, you know, a lot of you can probably do this in your own organizations, but just throwing it out there that we are here to help consult as well, because we've tried some of them. And our information is up here. Find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, although I don't know that we're gonna say yes, just kidding. So that's it. Anything else that we should be saying at the
No,
end?
that's
here?
it. Thank Nicole and Anthony.
Yeah, thank you.
Again,